The call telling us my father was the long-lost heir to a fortune came while my mom was hosting a dinner for a UN ambassador. My older brother was in London, closing a multi-billion-dollar acquisition. My older sister, a pop star, was in the middle of her world tour, and my younger sister was at Paris Fashion Week, partying with a new generation of European royalty. That left me. Having just graduated high school and aced my SATs, I was the only one in the family with nothing to do. So, I was the one who went with my father to meet his real family. We should have known something was off. The first thing we heard when we walked into the sprawling Boston estate was some kid wailing his eyes out. He'd bombed his SATs, he cried, and now he was going to lose his grandparents and his aunts. He didn't want to live anymore. Then I heard my so-called grandmother's voice, sharp and dismissive. So you didn't get into Harvard? Don't be dramatic. We'll find out who the valedictorian was this year, offer him a pile of cash, and buy a spot for you. It's that simple. Excuse me, did I hear that right? Were they talking about buying my spot? Staring up at the magnificent Brookline mansion, a wistful look crossed my father's face. I never thought I'd be old enough to star in a soap opera, he murmured. The long-lost heir returns. Dad had always known he was adopted, but his adoptive parents, my grandparents, had treated him like their own flesh and blood. They'd entrusted him with a significant portion of the family fortune to manage, and he'd built it into an empire. Today, he was the formidable CEO of the coal corporation. He'd gotten the news about his birth family after inspecting a new urban redevelopment project downtown. Since the estate was nearby, he decided to come straight over, bringing me with him. Well, it's definitely a plot twist, I said, trying to lighten the mood. I was curious, I'll admit. The idea of my father gaining a whole new set of relatives in this world felt like it could be a good thing, a nice epilogue to his life story. Just then, the front door opened and a woman emerged. She was middle-aged, her face a roadmap of wrinkles etched with a permanently sour expression. Her eyes scanned my father and me from head to toe, her disdain practically a physical force. I'm the Blackwoods housekeeper, she announced. And in this house, we value cleanliness. I glanced at my dad and suddenly understood. He'd come straight from the construction site. Instead of his usual tailored suit, he was wearing a simple polo shirt and slacks. While perfectly clean, a smudge of dust clung to his sleeve. I couldn't believe the nerve of a housekeeper speaking to us that way. I'm young, and my temper flared. What's that supposed to mean? She rolled her eyes. It means exactly what it sounds like. Are you slow? My father put a restraining hand on my arm. His voice was calm, laced with the easy authority of a man who commanded boardrooms. It's all right, Ethan. Don't worry about it. After years of dealing with every kind of person imaginable in the business world, Dad was far more unflappable than I was. She was just a housekeeper, after all. He had come here for one reason, to meet his birth parents and fulfill a lifelong wish. The attitude of one staff member didn't have to represent the entire family. But something felt wrong. I frowned. Dad, you don't think she'd have this attitude without the family's permission, do you? What if they don't actually want to welcome you back? If that was the case, we didn't need to force it. He patted my shoulder, his voice low and firm. Ethan, let's just see how this plays out. I know what I'm doing. I thought about the massive corporate deals he navigated on a daily basis and nodded, falling in a step beside him as we followed the housekeeper into the lion's den. Mom, if Kyle hadn't heard this news, he wouldn't have choked on his SATs. You know how brilliant he is. Oh, Aunt Susan, is it true? If I get a perfect score, will Grandpa and Grandma not abandon me and my dad? A powerful, aged voice cut through the air. Of course not. It's just a test score. If you want to be the top student, we'll just find the valedictorian, give him a check, and he can transfer his title to you. Besides, who said anything about abandoning you and your father? This family is more than capable of supporting two sons. Exactly, Kyle. You grew up with us. You're our darling boy. Another woman chimed in. What does this nephew who grew up in the sticks have on you? I froze. Were they talking about me? I was this year's valedictorian. They wanted to buy my acceptance to Harvard. Were the Blackwoods completely insane? Or just stupid? The moment we stepped into the living room, every head turned. A woman with silver hair rushed towards my father, her eyes brimming with tears. Mark? Is it really you, Mark? Her gaze was full of a mother's love, that at least didn't seem fake. Mark, my son, I've finally found you. My father's name is David Cole. Mark? I figured. Must have been his birth name. He let out a soft sigh, a flicker of pity in his eyes. He parted his lips. My name is David Cole now. Of course, the old woman said, dabbing her eyes. It's been 40 years. You wouldn't have the same name. She turned her affectionate gaze to me. And this must be your son. My dear grandson. My father nodded. This is Ethan. David Cole. A middle-aged man in the room repeated, his expression strange. That's the same name as the CEO of the Cole Corporation. My father just smiled faintly, saying nothing. The Cole Corporation was, in fact, his. It was the legacy our family had given him to build upon, and he turned it into a global powerhouse. The old woman, my grandmother, waved a dismissive hand. It's probably just a coincidence. It wasn't the most uncommon name. It was plausible. I noticed, however, that the middle-aged man was staring at my father with unconcealed hostility. No one else seemed to see it. And you are? I asked, looking directly at him. An awkward silence fell over the room. A young man my age, his eyes burning with the same mix of hostility and embarrassment, spoke up. That's my dad. I'm Grandma's grandson. The old woman, Eleanor, finally made the delicate introduction. David, this is the other Mark. And this is his son, Kyle. We never imagined something like this could happen at the hospital, that two babies could be switched. So the hostile man was the fake heir. When we first got the call, we learned the basics of the situation. Seeing his animosity now, it all made sense. I let a small, cynical smile play on my lips. So, you're the real Mark then? My tone set off a woman standing nearby. She was beautiful, but her brow was furrowed in disapproval. Ethan, don't be rude to your Uncle Mark. None of this was his fault. If I had been more careful at the hospital that day, if I hadn't accidentally swapped your father's wristband with his, none of this would have happened. She looked down, her voice thick with regret. If you need to blame someone, blame me. But as she spoke, I saw a flicker of something in her eyes, guilt, and a hint of fear. This was my Aunt Susan. Something about her story didn't add up. Was there more to the accidental swap? Besides the fake heir my father was switched with, Susan had two daughters of her own, Ashley and Brittany. Their names were familiar. I'd seen them in society pages and news reports. They were well-known figures in their own right. But right now, the way they looked at my father and me was filled with suspicion and animosity. They were clearly on team fake heir. They saw us as invaders. Aunt Susan continued, her voice dripping with magnanimity. From now on, we're all one big family, and families should live in peace. The Blackwoods can certainly afford to support both of you. You and your father will live here, and we'll take good care of you. But you mustn't hold a grudge against Mark and Kyle. In all of this, they are the innocent victims. I almost laughed out loud. We hadn't said a single word, and she was already accusing us of plotting against the imposter and his son. I decided to play along. I don't know, I said, my voice laced with mock concern. My father's been living in exile for decades. Don't you think it would be awkward for him to have this fake version of himself hanging around? The man, Mark, flushed with anger, his hands balling into fists. It was clear he'd had it easy his whole life, coddled and spoiled into arrogance. He had no self-control. The contrast with my father was staggering. Genetics, I guess. You can switch the cradle, but you can't switch the DNA. The story we were told was that after the swap, Mark's biological parents, a poor rural couple, abandoned my father. He was found and adopted by my true grandparents. The whole thing was full of holes. This time, it was Susan's older daughter, Ashley, who stepped forward. Ethan, where are your manners? He is still your elder. What do you mean awkward? Are you suggesting this family can't afford to take you in? Do you have any idea what kind of life you had out in the country compared to this? Besides, she added defiantly, as far as we're concerned, Uncle Mark is the only son of this family. So that was their story. They did a background check and found out about the poor couple who had abandoned a baby. They assumed we'd been living in poverty all these years. Even my stoic father was beginning to lose his patience. He managed to keep his voice steady, but his brow was furrowed. It seems to me you're not particularly thrilled to have me back. I'm almost 50 years old. This reunion isn't a necessity. If that's the case, why don't we just pretend this never happened? His words sent a ripple of panic through the room. The old woman, Eleanor, rushed to his side. David, how can you say that? You're breaking my heart. You and Mark. You're both my sons. The family won't mistreat you. I know you've suffered all these years. Your father and I have already discussed it. As soon as you're settled, we'll deposit $100,000 into your account. Susan's younger daughter, Brittany, chimed in with a sneer. $100,000 is a lot of money. Have you ever even seen that much cash in your life? Aunt Susan added, and since it was my mistake all those years ago, I'll give you another $100,000 out of my own pocket. How does that sound? I had to physically stop myself from laughing. $200,000. To them, that was the price of a new watch or a piece of jewelry. The watch on Mark's wrist was a limited edition from last year. While it was nothing compared to the collection my father and I had, it was still worth over $250,000. It was painfully clear the Blackwoods saw us as nothing more than a nuisance to be paid off. If you're going to be this insulting, I said with a cold smile, we have no interest in being part of this family. My dad had had enough. Forget it, he said, his tone turning dismissive. I can see you're all doing this against your will. Let's just consider my visit here a mistake. Years of chairing board meetings had given his voice a natural authority. When he spoke with that icy finality, it carried an undeniable weight. The Blackwood family members exchanged nervous glances. Suddenly, Aunt Susan nudged Mark. The man's eyes flashed with resentment, but he stepped forward and choked out the words. David, I took your place. That was wrong of me. But my little brother, Kevin, he's innocent. Please, I'm begging you, you have to save him. My father and I stared at them, bewildered. At that moment, Eleanor's tears began to flow in earnest. David, there's something else. You have a younger brother. We had him after you were lost. He's still so young, and he doesn't understand. He has kidney disease. We've all been tested, but none of us are a match. You and Ethan, you're our only hope. My father and I were stunned into silence. So that was it. The real reason they wanted us back was to harvest one of us for a kidney. All their reluctance, all their condescension, it all clicked into place. They were waiting for this moment. I exploded. In my own family, I was treated like a prince. My father was the revered patriarch of the coal corporation. Never in our lives had we been treated with such blatant, transactional disrespect. You brought us here to be organ donors. I yelled, feeling a sudden urge to burn the whole damn house down. Are you people insane? My father was momentarily speechless, but then a look of profound disappointment washed over his face. I knew that look. It was the one he got right before firing an incompetent executive or killing a bad deal. The Blackwoods had just been permanently written off. No, it's not like that, my grandmother stammered, panicking. She moved closer to my father, her expression of maternal pain looking genuine for the first time. When we found out, we were truly shocked. And I am so sorry, David. I regret every day that you had to suffer out there for all those years. If you had grown up here with me, you can't imagine how happy you would have been. It's my fault. The whole family has wronged you. She covered her face and began to sob, but my father was unmoved. If you were truly sorry, he said, his voice cold as ice, you wouldn't have chosen today of all days to bring this up. I've been in this house for less than an hour, and you're already asking for my life. The disappointment in his voice was raw. To be treated this way by your own blood. No one could endure that without being wounded. Suddenly, Mark's son, Kyle, dropped to his knees in front of my father. Uncle David, please save my Uncle Kevin. He's your brother. You're a real brother. My dad and I have wronged you all these years. If you save him, we'll leave the family. I promise. A flicker of reluctance crossed Mark's face, but he clenched his jaw and echoed. He's right. If you agree to save my brother, Kyle, and I will walk away from the Blackwood family forever. They were pulling out all the stops. Emotional blackmail. I scoffed. Give me a break. My dad and I haven't enjoyed a single day of Blackwood privilege. And you're asking for a kidney. Do you have any idea how serious that is? Losing a kidney means living half a life. Look at my father's age. A family as rich and powerful as yours can't find a donor on the open market. You have to prey on us? Aren't you ashamed? My dad was too mature and composed to say such things. But I wasn't. I had just graduated at the top of my class. I was on top of the world, and I was feeling reckless. Aunt Susan pointed a trembling finger at me. Kyle and his father are begging you. How can you be so cold-hearted? I stared at her, my eyes wide with disbelief. Cold-hearted? Who on earth would agree to donate a kidney just because someone begged them? If kneeling and begging is all it takes, then why don't you all get on your knees and sign over the entire Blackwood fortune to my father right now? With my dad's business acumen, he could probably triple the Blackwood family's net worth. Before anyone else could react, Mark shot up. Why should he get anything? He caught himself, forcing a weak smile. I mean, this isn't our family to give away. It belongs to Mom and Dad. I smiled back, my voice dripping with sarcasm. Weren't you just saying you'd leave the family if my dad agreed? If that's the case, what does the Blackwood fortune have to do with an outsider like you? Mark's face turned a sickly shade of gray. Kyle's expression twisted, a flash of venom in his eyes, but he quickly masked it, his voice becoming meek. Ethan, please don't attack my dad like this. I know you're angry with us. That's enough. A new voice cut through the tension. The true head of the household had finally appeared. My biological grandfather, Warren Blackwood. He emerged slowly, leaning on a cane. What is all this shouting? This is a disgrace. As the current chairman of the Blackwood Corporation, he commanded a certain authority. He looked down his nose at my father and me. You too. Come with me. I have something to tell you. My father's eyes hardened. Regardless of whether this man was his biological father, he had never in his life been spoken to like an underling. This didn't feel like a family reunion. It felt like a hostile takeover. Whatever you have to say, my father said calmly, you can say it here. Warren Blackwood's face turned livid. He was clearly not used to being defied. Nevertheless, he spoke. For all these years, this family has wronged you. Now that you're back, I am prepared to transfer 5% of the shares in the Blackwood Corporation to you as compensation. 5%. It sounded impressive. Mark was instantly outraged. Dad, 5%? Isn't that a bit? Here was a man who was not even a real Blackwood, living a life of luxury he never should have had, and he had the audacity to act as if everything the family owned was rightfully his. I glanced around at the pathetic scene, at Mark, Kyle, and the mythical sick uncle they were all so concerned about. Of course, the family fortune was probably destined for that uncle. No wonder Mark was upset, but his displeasure was my pleasure. All of this should have been my father's. Why should an imposter get any of it? My dad, however, simply waved his hand. That won't be necessary. You can keep your 5%. My father controlled majority stakes in a dozen publicly traded companies. 5% of the Blackwood Corporation was pocket change to him. His refusal left the entire Blackwood family speechless. Brittany sputtered, "Do you have any idea what 5% even means? Have you ever seen that kind of money in your life?" Kyle shot me a subtle, condescending look. Uncle David, you should at least take something. Ethan is my age, right? Just graduated. You have no idea how expensive college is in the city. My attitude earlier was inappropriate, Warren Blackwood said suddenly, his tone shifting to one of pleasantry. He looked at my father. Please, come with me. I really do have something important to discuss with you. Out of respect for his age, my father finally relented and followed him into the study. The moment they were gone, Kyle sidled up to me. Ethan, you must have had it rough all these years. Look at what you're wearing. No-name brands, probably from some discount outlet. I just smiled. The Blackwood Corporation was small potatoes compared to our family's enterprise. This kid was clearly out of his league. He didn't know that my clothes were custom-made by the world's top designers, who would never stoop to slapping a label on their work. I decided to change the subject. I've heard about you, I said conversationally. You were always number one in your class at school. How did you manage to blow the SATs so badly? I wasn't just guessing. I'd heard the rumors about Kyle buying his grades. His top-ranking status was a sham, built on cheating off other students. The SATs were a different story. There was no one to copy from. He'd been caught before, but the scandal had obviously been hushed up. The color drained from Kyle's face. It was a one-time thing. Everyone has a bad day. Besides, he added with a smug sneer, the valedictorian spot is as good as mine anyway. I raised an eyebrow. Oh really, you're that confident? My grandmother stepped in to smooth things over. Ethan, Kyle just had an off day. And it's just a title. We're the Blackwoods. We have money. We'll just pay the top student to give his spot to Kyle. It's not a problem. I had to bite my lip to keep from laughing. They still wanted to buy my title. This was going to be fun. Just then, my father emerged from the study. His expression was neutral. I couldn't tell what he and Warren Blackwood had discussed. Without a word to anyone else, he simply called my name, and we left. Once we were in the car, I couldn't hold back my curiosity. Dad, what did he say to you? I couldn't believe he'd agreed to a recognition dinner they were planning. We didn't need these people. A thoughtful look crossed my father's face. He told me that everyone else in the family is unreliable, he said. He wanted me to take over the Blackwood Corporation. I was stunned. How is that possible? You just got here, and look at how they treated you. Does he know who you are? My father shook his head. He couldn't possibly know. The Blackwood Corporation isn't in the same league as us. Our circles don't overlap. I suspect it's a trap. Something to do with your uncle and his kidney. He then smiled, a look of calm confidence I knew well. Whatever it is, we'll find out in 3 days at the dinner. They're going to publicly announce my identity. Your mother and sisters will be back by then. It's the perfect opportunity for them to come and see the show. I grinned. I couldn't wait to see the looks on the Blackwood's faces when they found out who my father really was. 3 days later, it was showtime. The Blackwood family had some standing in Boston society. While they weren't in the same universe as the Coles, they knew plenty of influential people. The official story they put out was that they'd had twins, but one was tragically lost and had only now been found. Everyone knew what that was code for, but they politely played along. My father and I were punctual. We arrived just as the party was getting started and found a quiet corner to observe. The air was thick with whispers. I hear the air they found grew up in some backwater town. Really, how utterly common. And the Blackwoods are throwing a party for him. I suppose it's the charitable thing to do. But he'll never be able to compete with Mark. A boy from the sticks won't know the first thing about running a corporation. My father just sipped his iced tea, a faint smile on his lips. I was busy texting my sisters on our family's group chat. My older brother was stuck overseas, but my 2 sisters, outraged by what I'd told them, promised they would be there to enjoy the drama. My mother, who adored my father, was furious that anyone would speak about her husband that way. She would definitely be making an appearance. As a renowned philanthropist who frequently appeared on television with world leaders, there wasn't a person in this room who wouldn't recognize her. Just then, a man approached our table, his eyes wide with disbelief as he looked at my father. Mr. Cole, what are you doing here? My father greeted him politely. Commissioner. Commissioner Thompson looked from my father to the party around them, and a look of dawning comprehension crossed his face. Don't tell me tonight's guest of honor is... My father smiled graciously. There was no point in denying it. That's right. The commissioner sucked in a sharp breath. He'd heard the rumors about the Blackwood's long-lost son, but he never could have imagined this. The man's true identity was world-shattering. Well, if it wasn't for us, you two would probably never get to attend an event like this in your entire lives. It was Ashley, one of my cousins. She sauntered over, holding a glass of champagne, looking down on us as if we were insects. You should be on your knees thanking the Blackwood family for even acknowledging you. Then she saw the commissioner, and her tone instantly changed to a flirtatious purr. Oh, Uncle Danny, what are you doing over here? Hearing her condescending words to us, the commissioner's face went through several shades of red and white. He glanced nervously at my father. I was just finding a seat. Oh, don't sit with these 2 country bumpkins, Ashley said with a laugh. You'll get dirt on your suit. Go talk to my Uncle Mark. Commissioner Thompson looked as if he wanted the floor to swallow him whole. Without my father's permission, he couldn't reveal his true identity. I saw Mark and Kyle across the room, preening in their designer suits as they mingled with the guests. Then, Warren Blackwood stepped onto the stage. The recognition dinner had officially begun. He gave a brief speech about the misunderstanding all those years ago and announced the return of his true son, David Cole. Then came the bombshell. He was handing over control of the entire Blackwood family enterprise to my father. He even produced a contract on stage, his face a mask of sorrowful repentance. For all these years, the Blackwood family has wronged my son, David. A murmur went through the crowd. David Cole. Why does that name sound like the CEO of the Cole Corporation? It's a coincidence. What would a country hick have to do with the Cole Corporation? He's just lucky to share the name. To have the same name as a man like that. What an honor for him. My father walked onto the stage and, without hesitation, signed the document. Now that you've signed, Warren Blackwood said, his voice dropping so only they could hear, as soon as you donate your kidney to your brother, the Blackwood Corporation is yours. My father's smile never faltered. So, it was a trick contract. The fine print stipulated that the inheritance was conditional upon the organ donation. But the microphones picked it up. A gasp went through the audience. The Blackwood inheritance came at the cost of the true heir's life. Donating a kidney at his age was a serious risk. Yes, David, the family is yours now. The least you can do is help your brother. Aunt Susan cried from the audience. Mark came onto the stage, shedding crocodile tears. David, I have no right to compete with you for the family fortune. But your brother's life. He only has one. You have to save him. Kyle joined in. Uncle David, you and Ethan look so healthy. Donating one kidney won't be a problem. If my dad was a blood relative, he would do it in a heartbeat. David, my aunt yelled. If you won't donate, then your son Ethan has to. Ashley and Brittany glared at us. If you refuse, we will never accept you as our uncle. My grandmother clasped her hands, pleading, David, please agree. Your brother is so young. He only has one life to live. Warren Blackwood held up the signed contract. Watching my father being backed into a corner like this, I felt a surge of calm. I knew he had a plan. And besides, I had done some digging of my own. My hacking skills had turned up some very interesting dirt. But I could see the anger in my father's eyes. He had held out a sliver of hope that his biological parents might treat him like a son. To be publicly blackmailed like this was the final straw. His gaze swept over Warren and Eleanor, and his voice became as cold and decisive as it was in the boardroom. This kidney is not for sale, he stated flatly. And Mr. Blackwood, instead of asking me, why don't you ask Mark to donate? He may not be my mother's biological son, but he is, after all, your biological son. A collective gasp rippled through the hall. Warren Blackwood's face went white. What does that mean? Oh my God, did he just say? My father's piercing gaze then fell on my aunt, Susan, whose face was already pale with guilt. You know exactly what happened all those years ago, don't you? You knew Mark was your father's illegitimate child. You bribed a nurse to swap us at the hospital because you knew I was a boy who would one day threaten your position in the family. An illegitimate son, on the other hand, could never inherit. If the truth ever came out, he would have no claim at all. Aunt Susan shrieked, as if she'd been stabbed. You're lying. What are you talking about? My grandmother cried, looking like she was about to faint. What does any of this mean? I grinned and leaped onto the stage. It means, Grandma, I announced, that for the last 40 years, you've been raising your husband's bastard son, the product of his affair with a mistress who died in childbirth. Aunt Susan here was so afraid my dad would inherit everything that she engineered the whole switch. You've been raising another woman's child this whole time. My grandmother's eyes rolled back in her head, and she collapsed. Lies, all of it. Mark roared, pointing a shaking finger at me. You have no proof. You think anyone will believe the ravings of a nobody like you. Anything my husband says is the truth. A calm, elegant voice sailed through the room. In the business world, his word is his bond. He is known for his integrity. All heads turned to the entrance. A graceful, impeccably dressed woman stood there, the jewels around her neck sparkling so brightly they seemed to hurt the eyes. Behind her stood my two sisters, one sharp and intellectual in glasses, the other a radiant beauty. Someone in the crowd recognized them. That's her. That's the wife of the CEO of the Cole Corporation, and the Cole daughters. My God, what are they doing here? The Blackwoods were still reeling from the illegitimate son bombshell. But the arrival of my mother and sisters left them completely dumbstruck. Warren Blackwood staggered forward, a look of stunned disbelief on his face. Mrs. Cole, what an honor. My mother glided past him, as if he were invisible. She came straight to the stage and addressed the crowd with perfect poise. I hope I'm not too late. Then, she looped her arm through my father's. They stood together, a true power couple. The Blackwoods looked like they had seen a ghost. Everyone in Boston high society knew Mrs. Cole. Warren Blackwood stared at my father, sputtering. You're... My father just smiled. I stepped up to the microphone he'd left on the lectern. Allow me to introduce my family, I said, my voice ringing through the silent hall. This is my mother, Catherine Cole, and my father, as some of you have guessed, is David Cole, the CEO of the Cole Corporation. We came back in such a hurry. We didn't have time to properly introduce ourselves. A wave of shock rolled through the audience. This was the party of the century. They were getting more gossip than they had bargained for. Then, I turned to look at Kyle, whose face was now the color of ash. "You wanted to buy the valedictorian spot?" I asked, my voice dripping with contempt. "Well, surprise. That's me. I'm the son of the CEO of the coal corporation. What price could you possibly offer that would tempt me to sell my future to you?" "This isn't like buying your grades in high school," I continued, twisting the knife. "You cheated your way to the top for so many years. You actually started to believe you belonged there, didn't you?" All the blood drained from Kyle's face. Mark looked like he had swallowed poison. My grandmother, who had been revived, stared at Kyle in horror. "Buying grades? Kyle, what is he talking about?" I helpfully explained. "It means his test scores were always fake. He copied off other students. The SATs are a little harder to cheat on, so his real talent was exposed. You didn't actually think he was a genius, did you?" My third sister hopped onto the stage and playfully tapped my head. She smiled dazzlingly at the crowd. "My little brother's place at Harvard. Any bidders?" Aunt Susan looked like she was about to pass out for good. Finally, my father addressed the stunned crowd. "Years ago," he began, his voice calm and steady, "my sister here swapped my identity with that of Mark. His birth parents, having no money, abandoned me at the hospital. I was later adopted by the late chairman and Mrs. Cole. I grew up in their family and never expected to see the Blackwoods again." He paused. "I apologize for tonight's spectacle." His words broke the spell. The crowd erupted. "Not at all, Mr. Cole. It's an honor to have you. Mr. Cole, you are a true titan of industry. Your children are so accomplished. What an enviable family. Yes, the Blackwoods can't compare. To have a son like you should have been their greatest pride. How could they be so blind? That Mark fellow, he isn't fit to shine Mr. Cole's shoes." The sycophantic reversal was instantaneous. It was the law of the jungle in their world. Hearing all this, and processing the news of the affair, my grandmother let out a final gasp and fainted again, this time for real. Warren Blackwood, seeing his world crumble around him, turned beet red and pitched forward, collapsing onto the stage. The shock had triggered a massive stroke. The scene descended into chaos. Amid the pandemonium, I looked at Mark and Kyle. Their faces were a kaleidoscope of horror, rage, and despair. It was a beautiful sight. In the end, Mark and his son Kyle were thrown out of the Blackwood family, left with nothing. They became ghosts on the streets of Boston, ignored by everyone. The Blackwood family scandal went viral. I made sure of it. After what they tried to do, they didn't deserve to fade quietly into obscurity. The public loves a good high society meltdown, and the story trended on Twitter for a week. Warren Blackwood was paralyzed by the stroke. My grandmother, Eleanor, never fully recovered her senses. The contract my father signed was voided. And my uncle, the one who needed the kidney, was already in the final stages of his illness. Without a donor, he didn't last long. Mark tried to steal the last of his treatment money, and while he was caught, the delay in payment meant my uncle was denied care at a critical moment. He died because of his own brother's greed. When Eleanor learned of her youngest son's death, she slipped into a coma and never woke up. With the help of my father's legal team, he systematically took control of the failing Blackwood Corporation, absorbing its assets into his own. Aunt Susan got nothing. All that was left to her was a house her father had signed over years ago. It was enough for her family to live on, but their days of luxury were over. When she chose to swap my father for an illegitimate child all those years ago, she never once considered what might happen to the real heir. My father, a man who could crush empires, showed mercy. In the name of a biological tie he barely felt, he left her with that shred of dignity. Not sending her to prison was the greatest gift he could offer. She didn't see it that way. She tried to cause a scene at the coal corporation headquarters a few times, but she could never get past security. Ashley and Brittany were quietly forced to withdraw from their prestigious universities due to the scandal. The last I heard, Aunt Susan had suffered a mental breakdown, and the family had sold the house and disappeared. My father had no time to keep tabs on them. They were, and always would be, strangers connected by a cruel twist of fate. My grandmother passed away a few months later. My father arranged her funeral. At her grave, he poured a glass of wine onto the earth. "You had a hard life," he said, his voice full of a strange, distant sorrow. "Raising another man's child for 40 years. The pain in your eyes when you first saw me, that was real. You were just lost. He took a deep breath. May you find peace in the next life. And if you have any power there, take the others with you. The old man is just a vegetable in a hospital bed now. It's a pathetic end. He lived a life of luxury for so long. It's only right that he should suffer a little at the end. The Blackwood saga was just a bizarre footnote in the long story of my father's life. Even if we had never met them, our lives would have been unchanged. We went looking for family, for a connection to the past. Who could have known it would end like this? It was a tragedy, a messy and pathetic one. But in the grand scheme of our lives, it was nothing more than an intermission.